Okay, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Safwan Shah, and today our guest is Amir Wain. He's the chairman and CEO of i2C. From his bio, you must have already gathered a series of accomplishments, amazing accomplishments, and they are numerous. I could go on for a few minutes just talking about Amir, which I won't do. But for the record, Amir created a world-class company, i2C, world-class by any standard. They're based in Silicon Valley. His company is the invisible power, the foundation of some of the biggest, most renowned fintechs and banks in the world. So without any delay, let's welcome Amir.
Thank you very much, Safwan. It's an honor to be talking to you. You are one of the persons I respect highly and think that demonstrate the level of intellectual capability that I really respect. And your eloquence is almost always impeccable also. So
thank you for that, Amir. So let me start with perhaps an unusual question. Can you share 3 words, just words, discrete 3 words, which you would say define Amir Wain?
Oh boy. I would say disciplined. I would say curious. And I guess person with high integrity. That's more than a word, but I would say those three attributes would probably be the strongest
Discipline,
part of my life.
Curiosity, and integrity.
Yeah.
Now, can you unpack them?
Sure. I think discipline is actually, it's so I think about it and I say hard work. To me, hard work falls within the bucket of discipline. Discipline is really finding a way to stick to your plan, what's needed, finding balance, wanting to do things when you don't feel like doing them, going the extra mile. For me, all of that falls under the discipline bucket, because it's really about pushing yourself when you are either tempted or don't have the energy to kind of push through. So I feel like that's needed every day. And I've kind of, if I look back, that's one thing I've been disciplined. I've always been extremely curious, want to understand why, how and what if, and those kind of questions always excite me. And I think that curiosity leads to some creativity also. And going against the grain or not, trying to elevate from the norm, all that kind of falls for me in the curious bucket. And I think the other 2 are meaningless unless you have integrity. I mean, that's the core foundation, right? So I absolutely abhor hypocrisy, and I think it's so important that what you say, what you mean, needs to be the same, and so on. And you live by your values. My values may be very different than the values of the society. It may be against what is considered right, but as long as I stick to my values, for me, that's integrity. So it's not about integrity defined by the society. It's really me living by what I believe is the right thing.
Well, so that's a great answer. Thank you. So Amir, the next question. For a layperson, how would you describe, or perhaps better, how would they experience i2C in their lives? And the next question will be describing i2C. So let's start with how would I notice i2C in my life?
Yeah, so I think of i2C as the Intel inside of computers, without the billion-dollar advertising campaign and the jingle. So we're not as visible as Intel is, but really we are the hidden tech stack in many of the financial services and products fintechs and financial institutions offer to consumers. So when you're using your Visa card or an Amex card or a MasterCard, it is possible that that transaction is running through our system and is being authorized, checked for fraud. So you buying a coffee using a mobile payment could be a way for you to experience I2C. And really the goal is to make payments as invisible and as seamless and as convenient. That's one of the qualities of a good payment system, to make it easy, but at the same time balance against fraud and identity theft issues. And so it's finding that right balance where consumer convenience is maintained, and you're also able to protect the integrity of the financial systems.
But the names that you mentioned, American Express, MasterCard, Visa, are they all your partners or customers?
Yeah, they are our partners, because remember, every card would have a name of a bank on the back of the card. So Visa doesn't issue cards, MasterCard, does not issue cards. It's the financial institutions or fintechs in partnership with a bank that would issue you a card. Card is only one form. It could be a DDA account. It could be, many different BNPL is another new use case that's coming up in financial services. So Visa, MasterCard basically sit between the issuers. Issuers would be banks that give you the card, and the acquirers or the merchants where you use the card. So think there are millions of merchants. How does your bank, let's say Citibank, connect with all of these millions of merchants? It's difficult for them to go and connect to each one of them. So they connect to Visa, let's say, or MasterCard. And on the other side, Visa, MasterCard connects to all the merchant ecosystem. So they sit between where you spend and where you get your card. So as an issuer, when a merchant swipes your card, someone has to take a look at the balance, make sure the balance is there, make sure this isn't a fraudulent transaction, send notification to the consumer. All of those things are fairly complex for a few reasons. Number one, it's a 24/7/365 business. You could be at the gas station wanting to fill up, tank of your car in an emergency. Your card has to work. It could be life and death situation. So payments are extremely mission critical. You can't say we're gonna, shut down from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. on a particular day. So the continuous nature of the system makes it very complex. Second thing is that the reward for fraud could be extremely high. So the fraudsters are always trying to break the system. So you're always the target, you've got bullseye on your back. So keeping the system safe and secure is another major challenge in this space. So, and it needs to be monitored 24/7, right? So 99% of the financial institutions don't have the ability to do that themselves. So they outsource all of that tech stack and the processing to companies like i2C. It's all white labeled. So you're going to see the bank's name, their logo on the website and so on. But behind the scenes,
the invisible power.
Yeah. Only the top 10, 15 banks would do their own stuff because they have millions, hundreds of millions of dollars of annual budget to support such a.
So Amir, out of curiosity, if you like, there's always this concept of impact. So if you had to back of the envelope say, what is your impact on the dollar volume? Could be by month. Is it $100 billion? Is it $50 billion? Is it $1 trillion that goes through i2C? And that would also give our viewers an idea of the scale of your organization.
Yeah, so we do about spend on our system is over $5 billion a month at this point, and it's growing every month. But spend is one of the activity. There could be inter-account transfers. There are there's money coming into the system. So I'm just referring to the spend activity is north of 5 billion and growing at about 70% a year. So
Wow.
that's the size and scale.
5 billion a month.
Yeah.
So now, to get here, it has been a journey, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I've observed you for at least 2 decades, if not more. Can you give our viewers, our audience, some idea of what it takes to get here? Now we are going back in time.
Yeah, I think my journey is so non-traditional compared to the Silicon Valley success story. It's just completely on the opposite side. So, but I'll share it with you. I2C was my third business. And I think part of the 3 things that I mentioned to you initially led to I2C. So I started my first company in 1987. I'd done my computer science and engineering from US. I'd gone back to Pakistan to meet my parents. And I met the head of HR of Pakistan Tobacco Company socially. And he said, well, what do you do? And I said, I've just finished my computer science and so on. So he invited me to do executive training program for Pakistan Tobacco's top management team to expose them to computers. This is 87, so people didn't really, know computers too well. So I prepared a, short 3-day course, 4 hours each day, and I used Lotus 123. And literally, I mean, these guys just, their jaws dropped. They were so impressed by the power of computing. So then they had me go around to all their plants, and the CEO, the president in Pakistan called up his friends. So I went to Philips, I went to Millet Tractors. I just started doing this, and I didn't go back to the US. All my stuff was still there. And then that led to them asking, well, where do we get these PCs? So we started importing computers and providing it to them. Soon, spreadsheet has its limits. If you want to do inventory, then database is more suitable. Then they wanted us to do custom software development for them. So we got into custom software development. We did projects for the Ministry of Finance, State Bank, the Auditor General, got into financial systems basically quite a bit. And soon, we ran into 2 problems. The business was growing. The top line obviously was driven by the hardware sales. And people started importing these drives and memories in suitcases. So anyone who's doing business through a proper channel could not really compete. So, it was 80% of our revenue, but we decided that we're just going to chuck it. It's just seeing the problem early and not sticking to what got you to a certain point, which I've done many times, was very important. And software development, we focused on it, but then soon we realized every project is, a new set of problems, a new set of challenges. So we said, this is really not leveraging intellectual property. So we started building our own product. So we built a product. At that time, ATMs were very green screen and they didn't have a lot of flexibility. So we wrote an ATM driving software like your earlier business. And we started selling it in the Mediterranean region, and Eastern Europe was just opening up. So we signed our first client in Lithuania. Then we got a client in Jordan and Belarus, and so quite a few installations. And that business was doing very well. But again, we noticed that the problem with that business is every year, start of the year, you start your sales at 0. While you have recurring maintenance at 15%, that really isn't the bulk of your revenue. So every year you have to start selling again to get to last year's revenue. And second, the support was very difficult because you were dealing with environmental issues at your client side. You don't know if it's, issue in their computer or network or firewall, and you're dealing with problems that are not really yours. So then we moved into SaaS. I believe i2C was the first SaaS company out of Pakistan. In 2001, we decided that before 2001, we had stopped selling licenses and started writing our multi-tenant platform, which basically means in the same environment, we could host multiple clients. So it wasn't on-prem, it was meant to be a cloud-based platform. And that really is where i2C started. But again, I mean, that business was doing very well. We were making money. And at that point, to take a decision to cut that business and move into something completely different, I think was a bold step that has really paid off. So I've done this.
It is amazing that a lot of people, when we look at the software development that goes on in India and Pakistan, they still do labor arbitrage.
Yeah.
And they are selling hour at a lower price. Yeah. Whereas what you did as a transition was monumental in the sense that today where i2C is may not have happened if you had not made that hard decision at that time.
Absolutely not. I think as far as, a business, many things need to fall in place for a business to be successful. You have to be lucky also. Call it lucky or call it just randomness. I mean, you can do everything right and sometimes things just don't line up, right? So taking that X factor out, you have to do a few things right. And one of the things is finding the right business model, right? You have to get the right business model in place. Mm-hmm. Now, if I think about what we were doing for software development on-prem, I mean, everything was just, you think about how am I going to become $1 billion company? And for you to kind of go install and support, it was just too, and Pakistan just doesn't have the brand where it's easy for even your people to go get visas and go to other places, right? So building a SaaS business, every year that we start, we've already booked our last year's sale. Actually, because our clients are growing, we've already got growth. Jan 1, we are ahead of our last year's number already, right? So every time you sign a new client, you're building on your success. Yeah, assuming that you can retain your clients. Obviously, there's a little bit of attrition. Some clients don't make it. It's not necessarily that they're switching, but it really is that you start from a great place, from a platform that you can continue to build on.
I mean, the point you made that you don't start from zero is probably the most concise and best way to describe it. But an area like payments, which there is no textbook for it. I mean, people say fintech, but there are so many nuances to it. How did you develop that expertise? And if you can quickly answer that, and then I'll go to the next few questions.
Yeah, I think the key was when we looked at the US market. So obviously we did a sales plan and a business plan. And by the way, where we are today is quite different from that initial sales plan. We looked at the market and there were big players like Fiserv and FIS, and they dominated the industry. And so we had to find an entry point where they either were not paying attention, more of an emerging market opportunity within the payment space. We'd learned payments through all the financial systems and the ATM software that we'd done. So we started focusing on the prepaid side of the payments world. But from a design and architecture perspective, we never built our platform to be product specific. While all our competitors have product specific platforms. If you look at Fiserv, they have a credit platform, they have a debit platform, they have a core banking platform. We really tried to build a platform with a Lego piece approach, put a lot of Lego pieces together, let our clients put those Lego pieces together to create a use case. And what I mean by use case, a bank account, DDA checking account is a use case. A credit card is a use case. What you're doing, earned wage access is a use case. So if you give them the building blocks and an environment, think of it as an app store. It really allowed our clients to innovate and roll out different products. And that's where i2C really started becoming the go-to place. If you wanted to do something different, you go to i2C because we had that flexible, non-product specific approach to the platform.
Now, clearly you are in a regulated industry, highly monitored industry, and you have an amazing presence in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Successful presence. So quickly, how does that work out?
I think Pakistan is a great asset for i2C. We have 1,100 people there. Our retention is fairly good. But there has been a lot of challenges, quite frankly. So some of them have gone away with just the size and scale. So one is infrastructure, So we've got 30-day diesel on site. We've got redundant everything. We've got satellite links. You cannot depend on the infrastructure that's given to you. So the minute you walk into the i2C office, it's completely self-contained. It's another world. And building that was tough till you get to a certain size and scale. The bigger issue, though, this is when I was traveling to Pakistan more often, was to get the Pakistani engineer to think that if a thing breaks down, it's not okay. Now think about his journey from his home to his office. The light doesn't work, this doesn't happen. We're so immune to things not working at the world-class level that by design, they just don't bother if it's not perfect. So changing that mindset, Safwan, was the biggest challenge to get the Pakistani workforce to come up with and compete at the world stage. And when I was there often, this was my messaging all the time, that we can be the world-class company. We don't need to follow what Microsoft is doing. If you like a UI, we can do better. We need to think beyond copying or thinking these guys are great. We want to be the best. And I had to really, really beat that message into everyone's head. But once 50% plus of the workforce gets it, they can start infecting the others with similar mindset.
No, this is a great point. This is a great point.
Yeah.
Immune to things not working.
They don't bother. It's just like normal stuff, right? So you have to change their mindset.
Let me just I really want to hear more of your ideas around these things. You're almost an asset for Pakistan, your company, for the impact that you're making on the global economy, I would think, in the US for sure. You recently started an initiative of the Responsible Business Alliance. Tell us about it.
Sure. So, one thing we've always done at i2C is that if you go to i2C's offices, and I'll get to the RBA initiative, there is one set of restrooms, whether it's for me, the senior most person, the T-boy, security guard, there are no two different, bathrooms. Everyone uses the same set of facilities. The dining area, you go, same tables, everyone intermixes, sits and eats together. So there is complete kind of true equality, regardless of the rank and file. You will see everyone being treated exactly the same. And it's so, it's hard to see that, okay, if someone didn't get a computer science degree, it doesn't mean they're not a human being. They don't have family, they don't have obligations. And the sort of pays that are, paid to the lower staff is just, it's not livable wage. So we had raised our salary quite a bit of our lower staff already. And I felt like, that was really helping those families, and they were happy. And you can see that people are just happy. I wanted to see how could we make a bigger impact. Through i2C, okay, we've 1,100 people, 5 people per family, maybe, we can do 5,500 people impact. How do we make that bigger? So I started talking to some friends and all as to why don't we increase the minimum wage to a point where these guys can at least have a living wage. And there were a lot of people who kind of agreed, and it was just I didn't even have to convince them. They immediately saw the problem. Sometimes, there are simple steps you can take that do make a huge impact, and till someone says, why don't we do it, you just don't think about doing them, right? It's not like
Fantastic. You
so
are
now we've got a lot of
inspiring.
companies that have committed to paying minimum 50,000 rupees a month. This is without any incentive and other things. So the base pay of 50,000 rupees to the lowest employed person in a business. Obviously, the tech people get more salaries on their own anyway. So this isn't aimed at tech people. And then, Safan, I tell you, a lot of times people say, well, our business can't afford it. And I say, it's the business problem. What is a business that can't pay a living wage, right? I mean, how do you call that a business? Go fix the business problem. You can't exploit people to the level and just, say, okay, that's how business would be viable.
What a great initiative. And I wish you, and I'm sure a lot of people will follow this, and hopefully it will bring a sea change. So now, Amir, you are an amazing business story and an amazing person. For the next 30 minutes, I really want to take all the questions and go through them with you. And there is a flurry of questions that have come in. So we may go here and there with these questions and just give a short answer or a long answer. Has the recession impacted i2C?
Recession has, in some of our client segments, like we work with the largest crypto companies, crypto.com, FTX, and the long list of crypto companies that use i2C services. So there's been a little bit of slowdown in that particular segment.
Little bit?
Well, part of our overall portfolio, I would say that they were a high growth component of the portfolio. Now they're not a high growth component of the portfolio because we don't have revenue concentration. We are still continuing to grow at a fairly healthy rate. And as far as Pakistan is concerned, the dollar situation has really sort of made things a little bit more difficult for people there, but from i2C's cost perspective. And here's the other thing, the beauty of the business. I mean, we could have every engineer in the US and still be a viable business. We are not at all dependent on the cost arbitrage of the people there. So while the dollar parity has helped with the profitability a bit, it's really not meaningful in any way.
Any customers in Pakistan? I know you don't do much business there.
We have not gone after any opportunities in Pakistan, but there was a company that was being funded by a US venture firm, and they told them to go with i2C. So we do have a client that is basically funded by a US business, and the investors wanted them to use us, I guess. So.
Are you also part of many digital banks in the US, the whole challenger bank world?
Yes, we are, and there are many more coming up which are moving the digital bank value proposition to a more rewards based, because it's difficult to really come up with a reward scheme when you are just doing core banking. It just doesn't have the enough revenues. You have to add some other services. So
any concern that with the rise of crypto, would that impact your core business of the regular sort of money movement? Would crypto have an impact?
Look, I mean, I think, I don't see how that would impact our business. We do work with crypto companies, and if they continue to do well, I mean, we as a tech stack, we don't make a decision as to whether the world should adopt crypto or not. We want to be part of the service delivery chain, and there are many things that you need to solve for that i2C offers. So if crypto does well, we are happy. If crypto doesn't do as well, we've got many other applications, earned wage access, BNPL, regular credit, digital account. So we really we are not a
You're like the
segment.
steel and concrete. You build whatever you like with it.
Yeah. Hopefully a little bit more non-commodity than steel and concrete, but
no, absolutely.
yes.
Any there's one question here which is again related to Pakistan. When you recruit in Pakistan, are there any guidelines, or a lot of people I'm sure are interested in joining your company?
Yeah. Well, I tell you, it's not easy. I mean, we still have 200 open positions. And while we continue to fill positions, we are growing. We always have more positions open than the number of people we can hire. And you have to look for a certain amount of talent and capabilities, and then have a very, very organized, detailed training program. So we have what we call a new hire development program. And it has multiple sort of sections. So one would be communication skills. One would be, global cultures. We'll cover different parts of the world. Then information security. So there's some foundation courses that everyone has to go through. Then depending on the area and the team that you're getting into, there's a whole bunch of training related to it. So the thing is, it is hard for us to find a trained resource in Pakistan. Even if we get them from another business or another IT company in Pakistan, we have to train them because there are no other SaaS companies, enterprise SaaS companies at the size and scale and the issues that we deal with. Normal people just don't. Do you
see any pressure with few $100 million going into the startup ecosystem of Pakistan? The supply must be very difficult too. So you see any good things, bad things, neutral things?
I think it's good. Look, I mean, like any other thing, many of these companies will learn. The only thing I would like to see, it appears, and this could just be my perception, that for many of these people, raising money as the goal is like the end game. Oh, we've raised money. And sometimes when you raise too much, that's a problem also. Like then the investors are looking for some sort of returns, and you start doing things which are maybe not ideal, or you're not suited to deal with them, and then you collapse. So staying focused on building a business and thinking of fundraising as an important piece, and not like, okay, now we've done the fundraising, we are done. I would suggest people stay focused on building the business. Raising money is an important part, but it's just the start. It's not time to celebrate.
You're probably the most successful, in some ways, you invested in Pakistan way before Silicon Valley discovered Pakistan, right? 20 years plus.
That's
right. So you know what it takes. And is there any venture capitalist who's ever invested in i2C?
No, we the first company I started, the where we doing training and all, was started with 300,000 rupees that my dad was the VC. He funded that for me. And since then, it's all been self-funded. Today, we are 100% self-funded, zero debt, extremely profitable. And we have the highest revenue of any IT company. Actually, you can add the top three, and our revenue is higher than them. So, they're publicly traded, so we know their numbers and so on. So
any plans of an IPO soon?
That's another thing. IPO is not something to be proud of. I mean, IPO needs to be done for a reason. Why do you want to do an IPO? There has to be a good reason. Mostly people would do an IPO if they need to raise money. If you don't need to raise money, why would you want to do an IPO? So at this point, we are thinking, but the reason for it is finding a way to offer liquidity to the team members at i2C. I think that's It wasn't really the case a few years ago, and we were very focused on building the business. We didn't need money, so there was no need to take the overhead of an IPO, distraction of an IPO, and then the reporting of a public concern. Like, you've lost focus all of a sudden from building business to dealing with compliance and, just public market overhead. Now, we feel like the 1700 plus people have worked really hard, and each one of them is a micro, I shouldn't use the term shareholder, but there is, till we go public, they have a mechanism to benefit from the profitability of i2C and so on. So more like a phantom stock, you can say. And to convert that to a real stock option and so on, IPO would be the way for us to go. So we're looking
that's
at
another
it
myth that you've so wonderfully shattered and explained, that IPO is, there are many pros and cons here, and similarly, getting funded is the beginning, if at all. It's the beginning of the beginning. It's really a viable business that you must create. So there are a lot of questions here, and as I go through these questions, I want to bring a few more. This one's interesting because you've talked about prepaid as your focus, and now it's going into the payment stack. But you have customers who are beyond prepaid also.
Oh, yeah.
Doing a lot of different things. So just a little bit of color on that.
Yeah, so as I said, we basically build Lego pieces for the payment ecosystem. So today, the use cases that we support: commercial credit, consumer credit, BNPL, debit, all sorts of prepaids, virtual cards, hybrid DDA and credit accounts, digital banks. These are all deployed use cases across the globe. And by the way, when we look at the card holders that run off the i2C platform, all 29 time zones are covered. There is no time zone where we don't have cardholders running off the i2C platform through one of our clients. Obviously, we don't go to the consumer directly, but we are truly serving cardholders across all time zones.
Wow. All 24 hours.
All 24 hours, yes.
That is pretty impressive and amazing. There's one other question here, and I have a personal interest in this because I think successful companies have leaders who have ability to get to the point very fast. And what's the bottom line? Not in the sense of how much money and so on. They always have these KPIs, which don't come from textbooks. They're business KPIs. Is there something you could share about that? What are your KPIs? And then in general, if you could share for people, how to think about KPIs or key performance indicators.
Yeah, I think the fewer, the better, right? If you have 15 or 20 different KPIs, then it's hard to focus and manage. And you can do an influence diagram, and you can see that these 15 will actually lead to 1 or 2. This impacts this impacts this. So really being super clear on that influence diagram, it's important that as to what's the cause and effect, right? And having a few KPIs would be the generic recommendation that I would have. Now, the other thing I would say is read the book, but then chart your own path. You cannot be a leader by following, someone. You have to learn from others, but then you have to chart your own path. And there is no one way to run a business. There is no operating manual. There are, people have great experiences. You learn, you pick things, but what's best in your business environment today? And business is like a living, object. It's like changing all the time. You can't, just the initial example, so many times when 80% revenue making a decision to cut, I look back, I think that's the single reason why we are where we are. If we would have stuck with what made us successful, we would have been caught in that and caught the downturn and just keep kind of dragging ourselves down and down. So being able to make those bold decisions, are important.
Any bold
Sometimes-
decision that you regret today? You must have. Steve Jobs had Newton, that PDA, which led to iPad. What's your bold decision?
There are so many, but like a golfer, you have to just forget and move on. You can't think about the triple bogey that you did. You got to look ahead. I'm serious. I mean, I've made so many bad decisions.
I mean, that's a great advice to anyone, right? Short-term memory should be.
Absolutely. I'm struggling to think of all the bad decisions I've made, and I made so many. I've learned, obviously, you learn from them, but like, I don't want to dwell on them and say, okay, if I had done this, if I had done that. So
there's a very interesting question here. If you were born in Pakistan, you're Pakistani origin, and you set up and you started a company there, and you set up a development house in Pakistan, extension of your company. But if you were not born in Pakistan, would you have done all this?
Probably, I mean, done this out of Pakistan?
Yeah.
Or
yeah,
probably not. Probably not. I don't think if you honestly, you put yourself outside Pakistan where you don't have any exposure, and you say, okay, let me find a best destination to work in. It's hard to pick Pakistan as number one. But we have a competitive differentiation. I understand the market a lot. I have my roots there. I have personal reasons to, be invested in that society. If I wasn't born in Pakistan, spent my, a lot of time in Pakistan, it'll be hard for me to, number one, navigate Pakistan. It'll be hard for me to understand Pakistan, and all the press and to cut through all that, to really understand the true potential of Pakistan would be difficult for someone who doesn't know it truly. Like, people are like, oh, okay. I mean, it's like these are ignorant people who are surprised that we have roads and all. They lump everything, Afghanistan, Pakistan into one. That's one extreme. But then very educated, exposed people also have concerns, and some of them are genuine concerns about the reliability and viability of ongoing concerns and so on. And I give them an example. We have not missed a single day in Pakistan, by the way. Our operations for 21 years, we've never had an issue where we've had to shut down our Pakistan office. And I've had people in Austin, our clients, shut down their office because they had ice on the road and no one could get to their office. So
yeah.
Geography is business continuity is not dependent on geography, but it's hard for people to understand that.
Wow. Amir, imagine there's this 24-year-old sitting somewhere in Pakistan and has never traveled abroad and is dreaming up their future, he or she. What advice would you give to them?
I think it depends on what you want. I think, so my advice would be follow what you want. I mean, do what you are passionate about. You have to follow your passion is a hobby of a rich man, or I shouldn't say a rich man, someone who can afford to pay their, regular expenses. So first you have to find a way to survive and make a decent living. That's just the overhead. But then focus on your passion. Once you can afford to focus on your passion, I think that's where you will find excellence. That's where work will not be work, and you'll just do well. So get yourself in a position where you can afford to focus on your passion and go after your passion is what I would say.
So the biggest struggle in life is to find your passion, right? So, and most people don't. They live, as it's said, they live somebody else's life, and then it's all over.
Yeah.
And if they live long enough, then they'll get what they deserve. But having said that, your journey is, I agree, unusual, but there is a lot of idealism in it, I think. You believe in something And I'm trying to get to that because I think the audience would have detected it by now, that you're not an ordinary entrepreneur. So how does that come about, right? It's not that you were not well off or you needed validation, but something brought you on this journey and this. So just talk about it if you can.
Sure. I think I am just a regular guy, quite frankly, and if the businesses weren't successful, I'll still be the same guy in many different ways. So all of us have it within us to be the best, form of ourselves. I don't think that there is anything special about me, but few things that are really idealism, I think is true, because that's where you stop doing a trade-off. I think trade-offs are really bad, where you start sort of making these decisions. Idealists are the one who at no cost will follow their passion or their beliefs, right? It's not like a business decision. Should I do this because of this? The level of commitment that you get from idealism, I think is what you need to really push through a challenging and competitive environment.
Any idea, any suggestion for our viewers on the couple of big technologies or changes that are coming?
Yeah, I think artificial intelligence obviously is going to redefine a lot of things. A lot of jobs will disappear and new jobs will be created, new business models will be created. So where is the niche that would keep humans relevant? We got to be thinking about that and making sure that we can do well. So I think AI is extremely transformative at this point, because the underlying technologies have caught up, where now we can experience it in our real day-to-day life. So I would say that is probably the single most transformative tech which is ready today.
Yeah. We are coming to about 50 minutes in this interview, and I'm going to give another look at the questions which are here. While I'm doing that, you came up with 3 words and I came up with 3 words, and they are originality, humility, and compassion. Those are not words that you would have thought of, but I wanted to say that that's my read.
Thank you.
There are a lot of congratulatory messages about RBA, Responsible Business Alliance, and that reflects the person you are. There's very little known about the amazing success of your company i2C and you, which speaks to your humility. I, from my vantage point, believe that you're one of the greatest companies to come out of Pakistan, if not the greatest company. And what you have just started is not only inspirational, but transformative. Any words that you would like to share, and then we'll sign off?
Thank you very much for your comments, Safwan. I get very uncomfortable when in situations where I don't like the limelight, quite frankly. Actually, it's just not in me. I like my anonymity quite a bit. I think it gives me the freedom to do things that I want to do. So I would just say, especially to young people, is to be a little bit fearless. Think of the worst possible outcome. Get comfortable with it, and then go after it. When would you do it? It's time to do it now. Just don't worry about the outcome. It's like, you are on the 18th hole, the match is tied, you got a 4 feet putt, and you start, thinking about the outcome. it becomes a 40 feet part. So disconnect from the outcome. Just go back to your process, just, all the hard work that you've done and just do it. So same thing applies in life also, really. I mean, just disconnect from the outcome. Don't think about like this, that, just focus on what your goal is and go after it without any fear, because fear can paralyze.
So I think that's the greatest lesson, right? Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
So if there's one lesson from Amir Wain to, I think there were almost 100 people that I can see here, it would be go without fear into the unknown, and good things will happen. There's a last question, and then we'll sign off. I don't know if you think about it, but what would you like your legacy to be?
Yeah, I don't think about it much. I don't think it's for me. The legacy, if any, should be defined by the historians. I mean, it's not for me to think about it. I'm not trying to chase an outcome. I'm not trying to chase a particular legacy. I'm just living my life the way I like it. I want to live it with integrity. I want to enjoy my life. I want to do things I like doing, and I just want to be a nice person. I think so. If anything, I would want people to kind of know me for who I am, which some of the words you described, I think, are quite true.
Originality, humility, compassion. I think your legacy will be transformative, Amir Wain. When you talked about your team, you thought about their families. When you think about workers, you think about getting them living wages or better lives. So I remain your fan. And with that, we will sign off. Thank you so much, Amir Wain.
Thank you, Safwan. Lovely talking to you. Thank you, everyone.